The Zodiac Killer. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Northern California became the hunting ground of one of the most infamous and enigmatic serial killers in history, the Zodiac Killer. His crimes, marked by a chilling combination of brutality and psychological manipulation, left police and the public gripped with fear. To this day, the Zodiac remains unidentified, a shadow that looms over American true crime history. The Zodiac's reign of terror began on December 20th, 1968, near Vallejo, California. High school sweethearts Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were parked on a quiet lover's lane when they were ambushed. Witnesses later described hearing gunshots, and investigators found David shot in the head at close range while Betty Lou had been chased and shot 5 times in the back. The brutality of the crime stunned the community, but no suspects emerged. The killer struck again on July 4th, 1969. Darlene Ferran and Michael Mageau were enjoying a late-night drive when they were attacked in a similar fashion. The gunman approached their car, firing multiple shots before casually walking away. Astonishingly, Michael survived despite his injuries and later provided police with a chilling description: a man with a stocky build, dark hair, and a seemingly emotionless demeanor. It was not just the murders that terrified the public, but the killer's audacious behavior afterward. On August 1st, 1969, the San Francisco Chronicle, Vallejo Times-Herald, and San Francisco Examiner each received letters from the Zodiac. The killer claimed responsibility for the murders and included cryptic ciphers. One letter chillingly stated, "I like killing people because it is so much fun." The first cipher, which was eventually solved by amateur cryptographers, described his warped philosophy, comparing humans to animals and suggesting murder as a game. On September 27, 1969, the Zodiac escalated his violence in a new, horrifying manner. At Lake Berryessa, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were enjoying a picnic when they were ambushed. The Zodiac, wearing an executioner-style hood and emblazoned chest symbol, tied them up and stabbed them repeatedly with a large knife. Cecilia succumbed to her injuries, but Brian miraculously survived to recount the chilling details. The Zodiac then called the police, calmly confessing to his crime and taunting them with his elusiveness. Perhaps his most infamous attack occurred on October 11th, 1969, in San Francisco. Paul Stein, a taxi driver, was shot in the head by the Zodiac. This time, the killer left behind a chilling clue. A bloody piece of Paul's shirt was later mailed to the Chronicle. The Zodiac openly mocked law enforcement, daring them to catch him. Over the years, the Zodiac sent more letters, some filled with additional ciphers, bizarre ramblings, and threats of mass violence. Despite the cryptographic expertise of FBI agents and amateur sleuths, many of his ciphers remain unsolved, perpetuating the mystery. One particular message, a 340-character cipher, eluded solution for over 50 years before being deciphered in 2020. It revealed yet another taunt, though it provided no significant clues to his identity. Suspects have come and gone, but none have been definitively linked to the Zodiac. Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted sex offender, was a prominent suspect, but inconclusive evidence prevented charges. Other suspects, including Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and Richard Gaikowski, were also investigated without resolution. The Zodiac's ability to evade capture has inspired countless theories. Some believe he was a highly intelligent loner, while others speculate he may have worked within law enforcement. His meticulous planning, cryptic communication, and ability to disappear without a trace suggest he understood how to manipulate both the media and the police. To this day, the Zodiac's identity remains one of true crime's greatest mysteries. His chilling combination of violence and intellect, coupled with his cryptic messages, has ensured his place as one of history's most feared killers. Despite decades of investigation, he remains a ghost, his story an enduring reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul. Jack the Ripper, a killer in the shadows. The streets of Victorian London were a labyrinth of cobblestones, narrow alleys, and ever-present fog. Whitechapel, a bustling district of the East End, was a place of stark contrasts. Its crowded streets teemed with workers, immigrants, and destitute souls, while its shadowy corners hid unspeakable dangers. In 1888, this area became the hunting ground of one of history's most infamous and elusive killers, Jack the Ripper. The terror began in the early hours of August 31st, 1888. Mary Ann Nichols, a 43-year-old woman living on the fringes of society, was last seen alive near a pub, searching for a place to sleep. Hours later, her lifeless body was discovered in Bucks Row, her throat brutally slashed and her abdomen mutilated. The police, unaccustomed to such savagery, were perplexed. This wasn't the work of a common thief or a barroom brawl. It was deliberate, calculated, and horrifyingly cold. Just over a week later, on September 8th, the killer struck again. Annie Chapman, a woman in her 40s with a history of hardship, was found in a backyard on Hanbury Street. Her throat had been cut with surgical precision, and her abdomen had been opened, with her uterus grotesquely removed. The scene was so gruesome that even seasoned investigators were shaken. The killer's methodical mutilations suggested a dark intelligence, someone who understood anatomy. Rumors of a doctor or butcher behind the murders began to circulate, adding another layer of fear to an already terrified populace. The Ripper's most daring attack occurred on the night of September 30th, 1888, now infamous as the Double Event. Elizabeth Stride's body was found in Dutfield's yard, her throat slashed but her body otherwise unmarked, suggesting the killer had been interrupted. Less than an hour later, Catherine Eddowes was discovered in Mitre Square. Her injuries were among the most horrific. Her throat was cut, her face mutilated, and her internal organs removed with eerie precision. A piece of her apron, stained with blood, was found nearby, along with a cryptic message scrawled in chalk on a wall. "The yous are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." The Ripper's final known victim, Mary Jane Kelly, met her gruesome fate on November 9th, 1888, in her room at Miller's Court. Her mutilations were so extensive that her body was barely recognizable. The walls of her small room were splattered with blood, and the brutality of the scene shocked even the most hardened detectives. Kelly's murder marked the crescendo of the Ripper's spree, a crime so vile that it left the city reeling. What set Jack the Ripper apart was not just the savagery of his murders, but his ability to disappear into the night. The twisting alleys and dense fog of Whitechapel provided the perfect cover for a predator. Witness accounts were conflicting and often unreliable. Some described a man of average height, dressed respectably, while others claimed he had a foreign accent. The only certainty was his ability to blend in, becoming invisible in a crowded city. Adding to the hysteria were letters purportedly sent by the killer to the police and newspapers. The most famous, the Dear Boss letter, was signed Jack the Ripper, a moniker that would immortalize him. Another letter, known as the From Hell note, was accompanied by a piece of a human kidney, supposedly from Catherine Eddowes. The letters were a chilling taunt, showcasing the killer's sadistic delight in his crimes and his ability to manipulate public fear. The investigation into the murders was one of the largest manhunts in history. Hundreds of officers patrolled the streets nightly, and dozens of suspects were questioned. Theories about the Ripper's identity ranged from a disgruntled doctor to a deranged butcher to even a member of the aristocracy. prominent suspects included Montague John Druitt, a barrister with a troubled past who died shortly after the final murder, and Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant with known mental health issues. Yet, despite exhaustive investigations, no definitive evidence ever emerged to identify the killer. The Ripper murders exposed the dark underbelly of Victorian London. Whitechapel, with its overcrowded tenements and rampant poverty, became a symbol of neglect and desperation. The victims, dismissed by many as unfortunates, were women struggling to survive in a brutal world. Their tragic deaths highlighted the indifference of society toward its most vulnerable, a fact that made the Ripper's crimes even more chilling. The legend of Jack the Ripper endures, inspiring books, films, and endless speculation. His shadow looms large over true crime history, a reminder of how one man's depravity can haunt a city and captivate the world. Though Whitechapel has changed over the years, the specter of Jack the Ripper remains, a phantom of fear and mystery whose identity may never be known. The Lindbergh Baby Kidnapping. On the evening of March 1st, 1932, a chilling event unfolded that gripped the entire nation. Charles Lindbergh Jr., the 20-month-old son of famed aviator Charles Lindbergh, and his wife Anne Morrow Lindbergh, was abducted from his nursery in their secluded Hopewell, New Jersey estate. The kidnapping of the child of one of America's most celebrated heroes would come to be known as the crime of the century, a case that would haunt the public consciousness for decades. The night started quietly in the Lindbergh household. Around 10 p.m., Betty Gow, the child's nurse, went to check on Charles Jr., only to find an empty crib. She immediately alerted the family, and panic ensued. Charles Lindbergh rushed to the room, only to find the window open, cold air sweeping through the curtains. On the windowsill lay an envelope containing a ransom note, crudely written with deliberate misspellings. It demanded $50,000 for the child's safe return, signed with an ominous symbol, 2 interlocking circles with 3 holes. Outside the house, investigators found more unsettling evidence. A handmade wooden ladder, broken in 2, lay beneath the nursery window. There were footprints in the soft soil, but no clear fingerprints were recovered. Despite their efforts, local police, under the command of Colonel H. Norman Schwarzkopf, struggled to piece together what had happened. The primitive tools of forensics at the time hampered the investigation from the start. The news of the kidnapping spread like wildfire. Charles Lindbergh, famous for his historic 1927 transatlantic flight, was a household name. The public's fascination with the Lindbergh family quickly turned to collective anxiety as the case dominated headlines. Over the next few weeks, a series of ransom notes were delivered to the Lindberghs, each more demanding and cryptic than the last. The kidnapper was unrelenting, raising the ransom to $70,000. Charles Lindbergh, desperate to save his son, enlisted the help of Dr. John Condon, a retired school principal who became the intermediary. A meeting was arranged at a Bronx cemetery, shrouded in secrecy and danger. Dr. Condon met a man calling himself John, who spoke with a thick German accent. John claimed that he was part of a gang holding Charles Jr. and assured Condon that the child was safe. Condon handed over the ransom money, marked gold certificates designed to be traceable, but despite the payment, there was no immediate sign of the child. The kidnapper directed the Lindberghs to a boat called Nellie off the Massachusetts coast, where he claimed the baby was being held, but the search revealed nothing. Tragedy struck on May 12, 1932, when a truck driver named William Allen discovered the decomposed body of a child in a wooded area just miles from the Lindbergh estate. The child had suffered a severe skull fracture, likely during the abduction. Despite the advanced state of decomposition, the remains were identified as Charles Jr., by the child's distinctive clothing. The discovery devastated the Lindbergh family and sent waves of anger and grief through the nation. The case went cold for nearly 2 years. Then, in 1934, a crucial break came when a gas station attendant accepted one of the marked gold certificates and recorded the customer's license plate number. The car was traced to Bruno Richard Hauptmann, a German immigrant living in the Bronx. A search of Hauptmann's home revealed over $14,000 of the ransom money hidden in his garage, as well as handwriting samples that closely matched the ransom notes. Hauptmann's arrest electrified the nation, and his trial became one of the most sensational in American history. Prosecutors presented the marked bills, a piece of wood from his attic that matched the ladder used in the kidnapping, and handwriting analysis as damning evidence. Hauptmann maintained his innocence, claiming the money belonged to a deceased friend named Isidore Fish. Despite his defense, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder on February 13, 1935. Hauptmann was sentenced to death, and his appeals failed to sway the courts. On April 3, 1936, he was executed in the electric chair, leaving behind lingering questions about his role in the crime. Some speculated he may have been part of a larger conspiracy, while others believed he was framed. The debate over Hauptmann's guilt continues to this day, with some evidence suggesting the possibility of accomplices or mishandling of the case. The Lindbergh Baby Kidnapping exposed flaws in law enforcement and led to significant changes in federal jurisdiction over such crimes, including the Federal Kidnapping Act. The tragedy remains one of America's most haunting crimes, a reminder of how desperation, greed, and notoriety can drive people to unimaginable lengths. Despite the trial and Hauptmann's conviction, the full truth of the case may never be known.
Thanks for watching. Come back soon for more dreaded whispers. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.